stay tuned because for the next 60 minutes, Motorsports Unlimited is on the air. Hi, I'm Jerry Bryant, and these are the lovely ladies of motorsports. And all this hour, we're going to have 60 minutes of action-packed excitement. All kinds of exciting things will happen. And we got the famous Bill Wildt, and we got all kinds of other good stuff that's happening all this hour. Motorsports Unlimited, 60 minutes of non-stop action. So let's go to the studio right now.
Thanks, Jerry, and hi, everybody. Welcome to the studio headquarters of Chicagoland's most watched, most talked about Access television series. I'm Janine Lauschat, and this is the 1088th edition of Motorsports Unlimited. Today we continue showing you how to weld. We're actually doing two things. In addition to showing you how to do the more popular forms of welding, we're also digitizing and saving some very early classic episodes of Motorsports Unlimited. You see, this material instructing you how to weld was shot 20 years ago. Oxyacetylene, stick, and TIG welding haven't changed, but videotape deteriorates with time, and we didn't want to lose this valuable material. We decided to digitize and reframe it because even though these welding techniques haven't changed, Motorsports Unlimited has. For example, we hadn't begun using an announcer 20 years ago. Here is how we started the stick welding show back then.
Hi, I'm Lynn Hewing.
I'm Tammy Reeves.
I'm Angie Kay, and we want to welcome you to Motorsports Unlimited Part 113.
Today we're going to continue our welding series.
Our regular viewers will recall that we've devoted 2 episodes of Motorsports Unlimited to explaining welding.
Welding is a basic skill necessary to participate in motorsport at a serious level.
Bill says you should learn it early if possible and use it often.
He also says it's fun to do, and there are many different forms of welding to learn.
The first 2 welding shows explain the oxyacetylene process, which Bill says is the first form of welding that should be mastered.
Today we're going to show you stick welding.
Stick welding?
It's very strange not seeing an announcer open the show, but you have to remember, Bill was still learning how to use television to tell everyone how wonderful the motorsports community was. Hi, I'm May Chin. Now, after learning oxyacetylene welding during the last 2 weeks, let's see what stick welding is about.
Hi, I'm Bill Wildt, and with apologies to Jan Gabriel, we are once again going to do a welding show, right, Christine? With apologies
yeah, right.
to
He
Jan Gabriel?
said he had enough welding.
Yes, although we got to be very quick to point out that he did say he doesn't want any of the welders to be mad at him. He just prefers the shows that maybe have some action footage and that sort of thing and all that. But Jan, if you're watching, we're going to do welding again. We're going to keep doing this until we get it right.
No, we're going to keep doing it until we finish it. We did get it right.
Well, that's true. We did get it right. Now, I want to tell our audience that we did cheat a little bit here, right? Because we had Angie come over the weekend, and we spent a couple of hours with you actually welding?
Yes, a couple hours is right. I think I've done every form of welding there is, and I'm not even planning a career in it.
But can you we don't want to go through the gas welding again because we already did that. We did 2 shows worth of it. And it would, obviously, for a person to become a welder from that, they'd have to do more than just a couple of TV shows, obviously. Can you give us a little thought now with the experience you've had with it? Is essentially, what is it? What is the welding process?
The welding process involves joining 2 pieces, well, actually melting metal down to its molten state and joining them together.
Okay, locally you mean?
Right,
yeah,
in a certain area.
Right, and so essentially if you can melt the steel in that localized area, you can weld it, right?
Right.
Okay, and that process where we're calling melting is called puddling?
Right.
Okay, now you did quite a bit of puddling over the weekend, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, I did.
Matter of fact, I don't know, Chuck, if you can get a shot of this. Can you come in on this?
You can also see the parts where it blew through.
Yeah, well, those are the little mistakes, and those things do happen. Chuck, are you getting a decent shot of that? Okay, he's nodding his head. Yeah, you did a lot of puddling, and as a matter of fact, at some point here, you were actually, this one here I think is quite good. You went quite a ways. I don't want to pull it out of the camera shot, but you did quite good there. This one is a good one.
She did a nice job.
What's puddling?
It's a little like welding, but without adding filler rod.
Filler rod?
That's right. You're fairly new to the show. Puddling is a kind of exercise with which people learning how to weld practice.
And you were doing it?
You'll be amazed at some of the things we get involved with on this program. Bill's had us learning to jet ski, fly an ultralight aircraft, and we're going to drive stock cars too.
And that sounds like fun, but welding?
It may sound strange, but it was kind of fun and interesting to learn something about.
Okay, let's get back to the show and watch Angie and Chris having fun.
By the way, a little later on, Bill's going to introduce Tammy Reeves to you, but you've got to watch the welding first.
Actually adding a little filler rod, right?
Right.
And what did you find out when you started sticking the filler rod in there?
That the filler rod sometimes stuck to it and you had to yank it back and forth.
Yeah, exactly. And with a little light piece like this, it actually yanked the piece, and it was a little bit of a pain in the neck. But the idea there, of course, is when you're adding the filler metal, you have to develop a rhythm of taking the filler rod and sticking it into the leading edge of the puddle, enough so, and you learn that after a while as to how far to stick it in and get it out again real quick. Because if you stick
Right.
it in too far, leave it in too long, the rod cools the puddle, and essentially that becomes part of the steel then.
Right.
All right, but you found all that out.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, we did something else. And again, I want to tell our audience that we cheated just a little bit, but not really, because the problem that we have here is that we want the girls to do this a little bit, and they've never had any experience at all with this or even seen welding done, right? All right, so, and we've got you guys in pantyhose and all that sort of thing. We've got, which we do for theatrical purposes, for theater, and I guess when I say theatrical purposes, what am I saying? I'm saying so we get somebody to watch this stuff, right? Okay, so we get an audience to watch this. And as you saw very quickly, I wanted to show you stick welding, and stick welding is a pretty violent process, isn't it?
Oh, it sure is.
But that is kind of what you expected welding to look like, right?
Right, that's how I'd seen it on TV.
Exactly. Generally, that's what television shows, because it is the best theater if you're going to show a welding process, because it makes sparks and it's dramatic and all that sort of thing, right? All right. Today we're going to show stick welding. And Angie, let me take the microphone from you for a minute. If you would go over to our, how would we say, our welding supply house, if that's, and I would like you to pick up the 4 pieces of welding electrode there. Chris, maybe you should hold this then. Yeah, that's right. Those 4 pieces. That's good. Thank you. What were your objectives? In fact, Chris, I'll ask you too, because, well, I want you in this conversation. You didn't practice the puddling, but you were there the whole time and observed the lesson and observed what these were. Now, what are these? What are these called?
I don't really remember. I know they're for the stick welding.
Right, they're called electrodes.
Electrodes, okay.
Okay, do you remember why they're called electrodes?
No.
Ah, okay. Well, they're called electrodes because that do you remember, Angie? Let me get you the mic.
Is that because the electricity is shot through? I don't know.
That's essentially it. And matter of fact, you're on this side, so if you would, can you give me that the electrode holder right down there? That's it. Okay, you should remember this, right? I'm teasing because you actually did do a little stick welding, right?
Right.
Okay. Somebody's got to hold this. And we need one other thing. Can you imagine? Now let's presume that we understand that stick welding is an electric form of welding, and essentially what we would do is, this is the filler metal, and essentially what we would do is clamp the filler metal in the electrode holder, and we would go ahead and weld, right?
Right.
Electricity goes through here, and we actually cause a spark down here, right, by touching on it?
Well, you need something to start the spark, right?
Yeah, we need electricity, but the other thing we do is we need a way to complete the circuit. So in addition to having the electrode holder, we need a ground strap to clamp on here. And by the way, welders out there, don't get panicky. I know that I'm going to explain this in a second, that this isn't what you clamp in the electrode holder. I'll explain it in a second. Maybe I can get this better. And I don't want to trip you, so we are in very close quarters, folks. In any event, we will take and clamp this to the steel bench so that we can complete the circuit with the electricity. All right. Now, what I was talking about, this in effect is kind of what happens, is that we clamp the filler rod after we're generating electricity, and we will make the puddle this time, instead of by a oxyacetylene flame, we will do it with an electric arc,
Right.
rather than by making a gas flame. Now is where we get into the real science of stick welding. And first I should tell Christine, that was a question that you asked Sunday, is why would somebody stick weld instead of gas weld? And what we pointed out during the time we were practicing is that gas welding isn't very practical when you get over 1/8 of an inch thick steel.
Right.
It takes too long to heat it up, Angie, as you recall.
Right.
In fact, what I did with the girls was that they were fooling around with this stuff, and this is just 20 gauge, a normal practice thing for oxyacetylene. And I went and stuck a piece of 1/8 inch, which I have around here somewhere, I hope. But I have a piece of 1/8 inch steel that I put under there and said, okay, go ahead and puddle this, and what happened?
And it didn't work. It took forever to get a puddle.
Yeah, it takes forever to get a puddle, so it becomes impractical at some point. And whenever you get into something like heavier than 1/8 inch, I recommend that people consider stick welding. Stick welding has got several advantages. One of the advantages that stick welding has is that it's what I call fast and nasty welding. It's not...
It was.
It's fast. No, it is. It's very fast. It also makes a good strong weld. There's nothing wrong with the strength of the weld.
Right, but you need to clean up afterwards.
Yeah, you really do. It makes sort of a mess, and it's kind of. But if you're doing something like building bridges and that, you really don't need to clean it up afterwards. Nobody's really looking at it. But it's or if you're doing in the case of something I would use it for, or some motorsport people might build an engine stand, something like that. It doesn't need to be that pretty to look at. It just needs to be strong, and you need to be able to put it together quickly. Now, the real science in stick welding goes into the electrodes, which essentially is the filler metal. And I'm going to ask Chuck if you can come in real tight, Chuck, on a shot of this electrode, and maybe if you could nod your head when you're in tight on it. Okay, got a good sharp focus? All right. At this end, we can see that there's actually steel sticking out. And I'm going to turn this, and Chuck, you'll have to tell me because I can't see your camera shot. How does that look? Look all right, right at the very end? Okay, he's giving me a thumbs up. Right in the very center, you can see where the steel, the filler rod is, and this on the outside is the flux, okay? The real science in stick welding is the flux. And these things, they make literally hundreds of different kinds of electrodes for a variety of purposes. This is a regular mild steel electrode, and it's different from this, and I'm going to explain both of these and show you guys both of these. This one happens to be contact rod, and I'm showing it because it's an excellent beginner rod. So we're going to show that. And this
I was amazed to see how quickly they are consumed.
Well, you'll be a lot amazed if you're the one buying the box of electrodes. You'll be amazed at how quickly these things go. Yeah, you can eat these things up real fast. But if you think about it, what we are essentially doing is creating a direct short circuit. For example, if I just took a piece of steel like this and turned the machine on, and I'll get to the machine in a second, and turn the machine on and struck this against the steel here, completing the circuit, this thing would literally go up, I don't want to say like a sparkler, it would go off like a fuse. It would literally melt away instantly. So the task in front of the designer, the engineer that's designing these electrodes is, how can we take and make sure that the electrical energy stays at the weld pocket. What you want to do with the electricity is make sure that it melts the steel right in that area, all right, and that it directs the filler rod into the puddle rather than just literally exploding all over. I mean, there is no...
In other words, this would be an example of the filler rod, but you need something on the outside of it.
Right, you need something coating this to do a couple of things, and one of the things is to direct the electrical current directly into the metal that you're working. And the other thing is to direct the filler material into that puddle rather than just spraying out all over. In other words, it would literally be sort of an explosion without any flux on it. So the flux, designing these fluxes is really quite an engineering field.
Can you explain what flux is, though? I mean...
Well, it could be, I don't know what the materials is, and some of it is quite guarded secrets. I don't know how they do this, but
because I know that when you do soldering, that there's a flux that's used. But now that's different than you're referring to this as flux.
It is, and
it's
we're
sort of confusing.
Yeah, it is real confusing because this is a sort of a solid form flux that's attached, and it's the flux that we're talking about. We also have a powdered form of flux.
And isn't there also like a cream type of?
Yes, there is. There are a number of things, and we'll get into all that in just a little bit. Let me just stick to this for a moment. Let's just assume that we understand that these are pieces of steel in this case, because it could also be cast iron. I'm telling you that
depending on what you want to weld?
Yeah, stick welding, as a matter of fact, Chuck is a person that works in a grinding shop, and they recently needed something where they had to have hard surfacing put on it, so it could be ground afterwards, and they wanted to end up with a hard surface for wear purposes. Another example is where you use stick welding a lot. Steam shovel, boys, I don't know old-fashioned, I don't even know what you'd call it other than that, but a steam shovel, you know, where it's got a claw, you know, a scoop with a bucket, all those claws at the end. Very often welders will go in there with hard surfacing rod. That's a real popular way of doing hard surfacing. They'll take stick rods that are made with high carbon heat-treated steel for filler rod, And in fact, I'll tell you another thing to do is
Doesn't the weldings
yeah, but
damage the heat treating though?
It does, but it makes it brittle, and in that case you don't care because it's not, all you want it to be is a surface. You're not
Oh,
trying to
okay.
make it be a
okay.
structural component, it's just a surface. And another thing you can do with it is they have stellite. You can get stellite, which is a very hard form of steel. You can get it in stick welding electrodes and just cover that surface that you're working on that you want, like in the case of a scoop for a steam shovel. When it scoops into the ground all the time, what you're doing is trying to prevent the wear of the dirt and the stones and all that from wearing those things down right away. So you can, stick welding has some great advantages in that area there. So there are a variety of kinds of materials. We're dealing, like I say, with a mild steel rod here, and I want to keep this simple, but there's a lot of different things that you can do with stick welding. And another part of it that's real important to know is that the machine that you stick weld with, what we've always called little buzz boxes. Now, I don't have a little buzz box anymore since I've got this sophisticated welder, but I can tap off of this and make it just like a buzz box, all right? Sort of defeating all of the rest of its purposes. But the little buzz boxes are very inexpensive. I've seen them for as little as a couple $100, or even for that matter $150 on sale sometimes. And if anybody's interested, I generally shy away, and I can always be shown wrong. Some of my knowledge is 25 and 30 years old because it's been a while since I've been through this, but I always recommend maybe a 230 amp, 220 buzz box, which can be had, like I say, for less than a couple $100, and you can literally weld just about anything you'd come into with race cars and trailers and things with something like that. Now, there are people that say the 110 welders have become more sophisticated and all that. It's possible. I don't know it though. So that's my recommendation. It's about a 225, 230 amp, 220 volt stick welder. Boy, it works very well for a lot of different purposes, and they're very cheap. Okay. We clamp this, all the electrode holder is, and Chuck, maybe you can get a shot of that. Now all it really is like a spring clamp. And the electrode, the end that isn't covered with a flux, is that visible, Chuck, in your shot? Okay. Merely gets clamped in here. And this thing has, by the way, it has several different, depending on how you want, where you're working, you can clamp it at an angle like that. We're just going to do it in a straight down angle for this application that we're doing, and this happens to be mild steel. Okay, now we had something else, well, I don't even know where, and we've got it for a specific purpose. Angie, can you get that? You're going to enjoy this job. You're going to like this one. Be careful. The big piece of steel, you're going to really enjoy this.
No, give her a place to set it down.
Yeah, okay, I'm sure you enjoyed that, right, Angie?
Whoops, this microphone thing.
What did you mean by that? It wasn't too heavy.
Oh, okay, I thought it would be overly heavy for you. No. Now, why did I say we were going to use this to stick weld with?
Because the last time we did stick welding, there were sparks flying all over the place, and you didn't want the pantyhose to get ruined, so we're going to...
Also, you didn't really like those little hot...
No, because I was wearing sweatpants instead of jeans, and it got on my leg and burned it.
Yeah, that's quite true. So we do want to warn our audience that the sparks net are fairly violent.
Fairly violent.
Yeah, fairly violent on this. All right, I'll tell you what we're going to do now. We're going to clamp this piece down. I want to give the audience a chance to take a little breath. We don't have any more, Chris. We don't have any more entertainment pieces to put in while we make these little...
you're going to have to...
Wait a minute, you don't have a microphone, Teen.
You're going to have to get busy on that.
Yeah, we're going to have to get some more musical pieces to put in here. But anyhow, folks, we're going to clamp this thing down and get ready to give you a demonstration of this. So don't go away. We'll be right back.
It's probably a good time for Bill to introduce Tammy to our audience.
He always wants the audience to know the girls that appear on Motorsports Unlimited as people. Let's join Bill and Tammy.
As I've said many times in this show before, one of the real pleasures of doing Motorsports Unlimited is getting to know some of the fine young women that work on our program. Now, Tammy, you're not exactly new to Motorsports Unlimited, right?
Right.
Okay, you've done how many shows with us?
This is my third one.
This will be your third one. The first one you did was Son of Spartacus, right?
Uh-huh.
Where we actually put you in a car.
Yep.
Okay, and the second one you did was when we did the Mark Schaefer piece, the Channel 2 News piece that did with us.
Yeah.
Now, how'd you like that?
That was fun. It was exciting.
Okay, now we told our audience before that you're still a high school student.
Yeah.
At
It's in high school.
All right, and we also mentioned that I found you at one of my old haunts in Benjamin's restaurant, right?
That's true.
Okay, and do we want to tell the audience what I noticed? No, I don't think we'll do that. But let's just say that, and I'm sure our audience can see that you're very cute. Now, one of the things that we like to do on the program, as we start to get to know the girls a little bit better, one of the things that we like to do is have the audience know a little bit about them. You told me something very interesting on the way out here. What do you have in mind for your life?
Well, really, after I go to high school, finish, I plan on going to college and become a lawyer.
Yeah. Now that what do you suppose generates that interest in you to move towards the legal profession?
Well, really, I don't know. It's just that I always wanted to be a lawyer, so.
Okay. I mean, do you have anything in your mind as to why you might have thought that? Was this a television show that influenced you, or anything in particular, or you just like doing paperwork?
I just like to do paperwork and help out and whatever I can.
All right. So there's nothing specific that you can recall in your life that provoked you to say, I want to be a lawyer someday.
Please remember, this material was shot some 20 years ago. We often wonder whatever happened to the girls who participated over the years. Did Tammy become a lawyer? We don't know. It's been 20 years since we've seen her. As a matter of fact, one of the most frequent suggestions we receive is that we ought to have a Motorsports Girls reunion. The only problem is, other than Allison, Peggy, and Renee, we don't have contact with any of them. It's too bad. We would love to do it, but there just doesn't seem to be a way. If anyone out there can put us in contact with some of the former Motorsports girls, it would be fun to let our audience know what they're doing. If you know someone, let us know.
We're back now, and I hope I put something in there real creative. What do you think, Chris? Did I? You know, I was thinking after we went away, there's like 2 or 3 things I can put in. Jan Gabriel has offered us some footage. Jan Gabriel, I should say, the producer and host of the network television series, The Superchargers, has been very generous with us. And
Right, there's all kinds of little action footage you can stick
little
in.
action footage
Right.
I can put in there. Plus, we've got some Mike Flanagan doing some lead guitar work. We can. I just wasn't thinking of it. And if all comes to worse, we can put a little Angie's video. Right, Angie?
Hold on to that tape. You may need it.
Really? Okay. What we've done here is we've clamped this piece of help me, Chris. Channel. This piece of channel iron down, and the reason, as I've explained before, is because we don't want to splatter the girls with the sparks and all that. Okay. And Angie, somehow I've got to get past you there. Okay. This welder is far more welder than anybody needs for a buzz box, but we'll get into this. Yeah, Chuck, you can kind of pan around here with this slowly. This is a lot more welder than anybody needs for a buzz box, but there is a way of tapping into it to run strictly a stick welding operation out of it. It's sort of a waste of it. And remember, whenever you're going to do something like this, Christine, would you pick up that electrode holder and make sure it isn't touching anything? When you turn on one of these buzz boxes, because what engages it is when you
sparking, yeah.
Okay,
I remember that.
Right, you don't want to do that. We haven't practiced this ahead of time. I'm just going to guess that's electrode is not really strong enough. Well, we'll give it a try here and see what happens. And what I've done is help our audience understand this. This is a Heliarc machine, but I've sort of disengaged all of the trick stuff and just tapped out of it to use it as a normal stick welder, just to demonstrate that this process and show folks what this is all about. All right, Christine, I need the welding helmet over there, please.
You want me to go this
Yes,
way?
yes. All right, thank you very much. And Angie, you guys are going to need, you know what you're going to need, right? What? To hold up in front of your face?
Face shields.
Now, it's going to get tangled
Yes,
if we
it
do
is.
that. This is really awkward.
How about behind you?
When she comes back, she can take it back.
Okay. Thank you. This is becoming like piece of the equipment, this thing here lately.
Yeah,
part of the costume.
Part of the costume, really.
Be careful not to arc that on anything.
You're not kidding.
Uh-huh.
All right, girls, if you will step around to that side, please. Just like that. Angie, keep going a little further. Okay, yeah, I don't want you getting sparks on your pantyhose, so just back just a little bit, okay? Essentially, when I touch this to this metal, we're going to complete the electrical circuit, and it's going to cause a short circuit. Now, normally, if it wasn't for the flux that's on the rods, on the electrodes, I should say, what would happen is that we would just have a direct short circuit, we'd blow fuses and all that. What's going to happen here instead is I'm going to scratch the material in order to establish the arc, and as soon as I establish the arc, I'm going to lift it off about 1/8 of an inch. Rule of thumb is the distance you want to be away from the piece of steel you're working on is about the thickness of the electrode. That's sort of a rule of thumb, but you kind of get the feel of it as you go along with the thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scratch it to establish the arc, and then I'm just going to weld along a little bit, and I'm going to stop and explain a little bit more. I don't know, is that clear to everybody?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Your plan isn't working very well
What's the matter?
with the sparks.
Did you guys get sparks? You have to have a mic thing.
It's okay.
It's okay? Nobody got hurt? Okay,
No.
Because we consider the show as big successes if, at the very least, no one gets hurt. That's what we strive for.
Gee, that looks dangerous. I'm mechanically inclined, but I don't think I would have liked doing that.
I saw them step back, so the sparks must have been hurting. I don't think I would like it either.
Let's go back and see.
Chuck, can you come in on a tight shot here? Right down here. I'm going to wait for you to nod your head. Not that tight, huh? Okay. All right, I want to show a couple of things about this, and I'm going to shut the welder off for a moment. Angie, come on over here, please, on this side, and stop right there, okay? Now, we talked a little bit about this before. You see now that we did, in fact, puddle the metal, right?
Right.
And the filler rod is added there, right?
Right.
But there's also a mess on top of it, isn't there?
Right. Which
okay.
you need to chip away at.
Exactly. Now, I explained this to you Sunday when we were there, that this stuff always has to be chipped away. That's one of the disadvantages, in fact, the biggest disadvantage of stick welding, is that the flux actually gets in the weld puddle, floats to the surface as it's cooling, and it ends up there as a form of slag. And in order to clean that up, every welder uses a chipping hammer. This is what a chipping hammer looks like. And Angie, I don't want anything to hit you, so if you'd step back around there. Okay. And I should set good practice here and always use safety glasses.
I think so.
No, we're not going to have anything with any light though. So.
No, but we don't want
these in our eyes.
Okay. And the slag, Chuck, were you able to get that? No? It's way too big of a picture. He's motioning. Okay, it's way too big of a picture. We'll have to do a tight shot of this afterwards and put it in, and it'll look like we know how to do television, okay? In any event, that's what happens with stick welding, is that you have to chip away that slag. Now, that stuff came off fairly easy. It doesn't always work that way. It can be very difficult. And after you do that with a chipping hammer, get the most of it off, you have to come back and wire brush it.
But there's still an awful lot on there. If this is something that's going to show, you have to do a whole lot more work.
Right. It's what I call fast and nasty welding. It's fast, it's strong, it's economical, but it's not really the prettiest welding in the world. Although I must say, now let me say this in defense of this stuff, and I want to tell our audience, I did before I had Heliarconet. I mean, I didn't always have that stuff either, and I spent an awful lot of time, maybe 15 years. All I had was the buzz box and the oxyacetylene, and I got to the point, in fact, most people would just use the buzz box stick welding for heavier stuff, but I got to the point where I could do 20 gauge stuff like this just as nicely as I could do it with oxyacetylene welding, and things like expansion chambers, exhaust tubing systems. I could weld it up very nicely with the stick welding. So it can be done. It does take a little developing of talent.
Well, so far from what we've learned between the oxyacetylene and the stick welding sure does seem a lot easier to do because you don't have to add rod. The rod's already there.
Okay, excellent point. I'm glad you made that point. Yes, the audience should know that one of the things that happened as we were doing this, as I was doing that little bit of welding, is notice now that the electrode is shorter, and Chuck, can we show that to our audience? The electrode, even on this end, is now shorter because the material that went into the filler rod that went into here is now down there. So we've used up part of the electrode. That means that as you're welding along, you scratch that arc in order to establish it. You scratch the material, and then you hold it perhaps 1/8 of an inch away. As you're welding along, you have to continually keep bringing the electrode down because you're consuming it. This is called a consumable electrode. You are actually using it up as filler metal going into the material. So that adds to the degree of difficulty of the welding technique. It's not just like you had a continuous length piece of material like that and you just held it at that length and went along. You have to keep coming down as you're using it up. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay. This is regular mild steel. Angie, you want to give it a try? Now, Chris didn't try it last time. You want to give it a shot?
I guess so.
Okay.
Do I have to wear the helmet? Or
No,
what?
no, no. I'm going to do this the easy way, but I want to see if you can actually do this.
Okay, what side do you want me on?
I'll tell you what we're going to do. Matter of fact, I had you actually do the contact rod, didn't I? Right. Let's not
Yes,
complicate
because
this.
do be careful because those sparks were flying way over here where we were, and
okay.
you know.
Okay. Let's do it that way. For beginners, let's get right into the contact rod. For beginners, and by the way, one other thing. I do have a heat control here on this particular welder, and I don't know, Chuck, can you pan over to the welder where I'm pointing? And I had it set, and it's probably not exactly correct for this, because again, I don't use this very much as a stick welder, obviously, when I've got a heliarc machine. But I had it set at about 125, 130 degrees. That's about half of what I mentioned before a person would need, about a 230 amp welder. That's about half of where it would be. If I were going to a heavier rod, heavier electrodes, I would probably crank it up to maybe 200, 225 degrees, something like that, which would be the limit of those little inexpensive little boxes. But this is a pretty good size, pretty good thickness of steel, and I was able to actually put a decent weld down into it without a great deal of either undercutting or buildup on top. So a little buzz box can do a very nice job. Now, for beginners, yes, go ahead, Tina.
Does the material that you're welding with the stick welder have anything to do with the mess that's left over? See, because this looks different than what you and Angie were doing Sunday. Remember, how it was like leaving little teensy-weensy, little bitsy things everywhere. Does that have anything to do with what the surface of what you're welding?
No, it doesn't. In fact, this also has it if you look real close. Now, take a real close look there. You see those little, that's still hot. You see the little tiny things there?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead and take the mic again. But
that's
you were
not-
talking about, right. The reason was I had it cranked up to about 150 degrees.
Oh,
And the
okay.
temperature was too high, and what she's talking about is these little like steel, I'm going to call them globules, little steel globules, and they splatter all over, and they're
And they
hot
dry
molten
there,
steel,
and you have to chip them off.
and you have to chip them off. Now, with stick welding, it's pretty hard to avoid them altogether, but if you take a little time and select the right heat and the right rod with the right flux
Oh,
on
okay. It was too hot then. What
it was,
you were
it was,
doing.
really,
Okay.
it was too hot, and that's what you were seeing. But you're always going to get a little bit of that. Again, that's part of the disadvantage of stick welding is that it does make more of a mess. As far as the weld is concerned, it makes more of a mess, and that is one of the disadvantages of it. It's not a real clean process. Now, to aid beginners, they came up with, believe it or not, that's exactly what they came up with it for, to aid beginners some time ago, because the difficult part of the stick welding process would be trying to maintain that distance away from the material. I'm sure you can understand as you're welding along, you have to be, and again, the important thing is the weld puddle all the time, and let me emphasize that point. This welder, this stick welder, doesn't do anything different, nothing different at all than the oxyacetylene welder did. In other words, it puddles the metal and filler rod goes in. That's it. It just does it differently. It does exactly the same thing. And one of the reasons why I insist if I get involved, and I've done it many times over the years, of teaching someone how to weld, is that they learn how to oxyacetylene weld first. Reason being is everything, for a dozen reasons, but one of the main reasons is everything happens very slowly. Angie, you were practicing with the puddling.
Yeah.
You saw it took time. It took cherry red hot, and then you actually saw the little puddle develop and all that. Whereas this does it almost instantly. And for a person that's inexperienced, it's startling. They don't realize what's happening. Where the oxyacetylene, it slows everything down. It gives you an opportunity to see how metal behaves as it enters its molten state. As you add filler rod, how it behaves, that it
You
cools.
can actually see the heat,
You can actually, yeah,
which I
right,
think is helpful.
is helpful. So when you go into this, yeah, this is real handy and quick and all that, but I really think you handicap yourself if all you learn is this and you never learn that, and then you don't see how metal behaves. And again, trust me, you really should do oxyacetylene first, then move on to this.
I think we should interrupt for a moment and underline the similarity of all welding. First, you have to locally return the metal to its molten state. Then you have to add filler metal to replace metal being consumed and add strength by making it thicker.
In the case of oxyacetylene welding, or gas welding as it is commonly referred to, you make the metal molten by burning acetylene with added oxygen by way of the welding torch. In the case of stick welding, you make the metal molten by electric arc. With gas welding, the filler rod is added to the puddle separately, while the stick welding process uses the consumable electrode you are using to create the arc for the filler rod. In either case, you puddle the metal, make it molten, then add the filler rod.
You're doing the same thing with both processes, just differently.
But to help beginners when they get involved with stick welding, they developed a rod. And like I said, the difficult thing is a couple of things happen with amateurs when they start with this, is that they continually will stick the electrode to the surface. They'll strike that arc, and instead of scratching it across quickly and picking up so that the weld stays the arc stays established, they'll go like that. It'll stick to it, and then the machine goes, and this whole thing, you can see it turn cherry red, and they blow fuses and all that. It's sort of funny. But it's real aggravating when it's happening. And the reason is, in order to properly establish the arc, you scratch it. And part of that scratching motion has to be that you pull away from it. Don't just establish an electrical...
Like striking a match.
Like striking a match. Don't just establish an electrical connection and stay there. You've got to do like that and bring it up. But it is, I'm teasing, of course, but I've been doing this a good many years. So, and I went through all that too. So to aid beginners, they come out with a rod called a contact rod. And essentially what contact rod is, the flux, as you can see now, these are both 1/8 inch mild steel electrodes. And Chuck, can you come in with a real tight shot of this, please? Okay, maybe you can nod your head when you're there. He's looking for that focus. Can we get it sharp? Okay. Now you'll notice that the one rod is significantly thicker than the other, right? Okay, everybody agree with that? Okay, however, and Chuck, if you pan over here to this end, you'll see that these rods are really both the same thickness. Can you see that? As far as the actual filler metal is concerned.
Right.
Okay? Now, so obviously it has a different kind of flux on it, and this flux is what makes this contact rod. And what they've done is they've actually, and I won't claim to know it, and I'm reaching back 25 years for this knowledge, so if I'm technically not exactly right, I have the thrust of it correct at least. What they did was actually put a little powdered iron into the flux itself, so that the flux itself could carry a little bit of electricity. So that what happens when, for example, is you see how this burns in like that, and if you look on the inside, and Chuck, don't even try for this because I don't think we can get this at all, but I'll show the girls. You see how there's like little sparkles and that in there? That's all that. That's all the little iron powder in there, and that will carry a little electricity, so that you don't have to actually stick the filler steel, actually make an electrical contact with it. That by virtue of putting this, and sometimes you got to whack it a little bit to establish it, by putting this on here, you can establish the arc without the metal actually really touching it, and the way it burns in, you can see that the actual filler metal is actually held about 1/8 of an inch away from the metal itself, and you don't have to hold this off. You literally drag it across on the surface. It's called contact rod, and it makes contact as you go along.
Is that just for beginners, though, or could you just use that and never go to the other?
I'll tell you what. I believe it was developed just for beginners and everything, and I used it several times. And you can do a nice weld with this. I think because the flux itself has some filler rod in it, it really does make a nice job out of it. So I ended up using it when it's not practical in all circumstances. It's very difficult to do overhead welding with it, if not impossible, and even vertical welding is very difficult. But if you're just going to do downhand welding like what we're demonstrating here, the simplest form, you can do real nice work with this stuff. Now I'm going to demonstrate it. One thing you do have to do, because remember now we're essentially dealing with a thicker rod, because we do have, even though the filler metal is the same, the electrode itself has some filler metal in the flux, so we have to put more heat into it. So I'm going to first take and dial the heat up a little bit, maybe up to about let's say 170 degrees. I hope that's going to be enough. Chris, would you hold this, please? Okay, you guys have your masks? Very important, by the way, let me say that, very important. Whenever you're the oxyacetylene weld is not that important as far as, well, you should always wear eye protection, of course, and it should darken it and all that. But the light from that is not nearly as intense as it is from the stick welding or from the heliarc welding. And boy, you definitely don't look at this, because if you do, you can permanently damage your eyes. So it's always important when you look at this that you look at it through, and those of you know, they're very, very dark. Okay?
Boy, I don't like the sound of that at all.
Neither do I. Permanent eye damage just from looking?
It's not really as bad as it seems, and the eye protection works very well.
Let's see how they made out.
All right. Angie, come around over here, please. Take the mic with you. You're going to need it. What do you see now?
I see a big layer of, what is it, slag on top there?
Yeah, that's slag. That's exactly right. I'm going to chip it off a little bit, and you just kind of hold your hand up because I just want it to... Okay.
Here we go.
There we go. All right.
We trust you.
And again, you should really do safety glasses with this. All right, now what do you see?
Now you can see down to the weld.
To the weld bead, right? All right, I'm going to wire brush it off a little bit. And again, that's one of the problems with the stick welding, is that you've always got that mess to clean up and all that, okay? Also, if you will notice, and again, Chuck, I'm going to ask you to come in on a tight shot of this, and we're going to have to go through that focus problem and everything to see if we can get this at all. Can you get this right here? Okay, have you got it? Can you see that that's actually sunk in there? Okay, he's nodding his head, he can. Now, Andrew, what I want to explain there is, again, that's what gives you the ability to actually hit the surface with this and keep it stuck on the surface, and we don't short it out. We just keep welding right along. By this, you actually drag. You actually apply light pressure to it and just let it feed at its own rate and drag it across. It's called contact weld, and that's what it looks like after you've done a little bit of, welded a little bit. Now, in order to establish this arc, you're probably going to have to whack it on there kind of hard. In fact, I'll help you with it a little bit. We'll just take and whack it hard. And the reason being is that it's not going to really recognize that the filler metal is touching it. That's not that great of an electrical connection. It's just slightly, so we got to like jog it into action. One other thing, we were just corrected by the Chuck here. He said, by the way, because Chuck, by the way, we should tell our audience, is an absolute expert on electronics and electrical things. And apparently I've been saying all evening on this show, when we're setting the heat here, I've been saying we've got this at 100 degrees and 170 degrees and all that. And that's really kind of shop talk for welders. That's kind of how we talk, but Chuck is correct. That's 150 amps or 170 amps. We're not really talking about degrees, we're talking about amps. Because really, in effect, if we were talking about temperatures, we call it temperature. We say, give me some more heat, or give me some... We're not really talking about temperatures, we're talking about amps. Because the temperature has to remain consistent. We're looking for the temperature that will melt the steel, and we're certainly not changing the temperature. It's slang, okay? Chuck, is that a good explanation? Okay, great. He's giving me a thumbs head. Okay. Angie, are you ready to try?
Sure.
You want to give it a shot?
Sure.
Okay, Christine, would you take the microphone so she can come over here? Come right on over here.
You need one of these, right?
Yes, you do. I'm going to hold it up for you, though. And step right around here. Okay. Now, I want you to do it right where I was, right in that area there, but I want you to step back because any splatters I want to go forward. Okay?
Okay.
Now, I'll do this for you. Can you hold this up with your other hand? Now you're going to have to lean way over.
Just a weld. Hold the mask.
You have to lean way over. Can you see it now? Okay, now I'm going to help you with this. You see, you're holding right on it. Feel it? Good. We burn you?
No.
We didn't burn you?
Grabbing the mask instead of the mic. No, we didn't.
Didn't burn. Did you feel that we were actually laying it right on the metal and we weren't lifting it off?
Right.
To establish the arc?
Right.
Okay, does that make any sense?
Yes.
Okay. Can you step over there a little bit more? Are there any questions about this?
Do you have to wear asbestos fire suits to do this?
Normally, welders that would be doing this all day would be wearing leather aprons, heavy leather aprons and all that sort of thing. Yeah, you do want to be protected, obviously. And we had a guy call. Where did he call from? He saw it on the Continental Will County system, so it had to be from somewhere in Will County. He called and said that we didn't emphasize safety enough when we were doing welding, right, Chris?
He didn't like the idea that the girls were standing here in the pantyhose in these outfits. He thought that we should at least have on welding aprons.
Right, and let me explain it to the viewer. Is that first of all, as my regular viewers know, I hate safety. I hate all that conversation about it. At a philosophical level,
You're not against being safe.
and being careful and all that.
You're against rules governing you being safe
I'm against,
and laws.
I guess what I think is most important to me in life is the freedom to pursue life, liberty, and happiness and all that. And that freedom is very important to me, and that I like to think that we're all heads up enough and intelligent enough as grown adults to know that when you're dealing with something that's at 4,000 or 5,000 degrees, be careful. You can hurt yourself. It's hot.
Yeah, but Bill, you know yourself, you do have to mention it.
Right, and his point is well taken, by the way, and I'm glad that he called. In fact, we're always happy when viewers call. We encourage viewers to call. We want them to participate in the program. And so, yes, if I didn't emphasize safety enough, I want to emphasize it again. This stuff can hurt you big time. You can really, the little sparks that you felt, just the little tiny sparks, you didn't care for those.
No.
You can imagine, another thing I can mention too, safety, we'll give them a full measure here real quick. Another thing we can do with safety is when you weld on a piece and it gets good and hot, don't take and put that piece on a garage floor. Now we tend to think of things like concrete or bricks or something, we tend to think of that can take heat, right?
It can't?
No, it can't. That is not a, I'm going to use it incorrectly, but there is a term for fire brick and for stone materials that can take heat. Those are called refractory materials. And unless you have a specific refractory material that it's made out of, what will happen is there is always moisture in those things. And you put that down and the moisture wants to expand because it's taking the heat of the part, and boy, will you get a little hard explosion. It'll toss the piece in the air.
Oh, you're kidding!
Oh, I've done it a dozen times.
Oh, no.
Sure, no, I've done it.
What kind of floor is this, Bill, that we're standing on right now?
This is concrete. It's not
No.
a refractory surface. So no. So you want. So again.
No wonder I hear strange noises in the night.
Yeah,
wondering
boom.
what might.
But in any event, no. All kidding aside, I mean, if you're going to use, for example, if you're going to practice welding, people often say to put it up on bricks. Well, make sure you use fire bricks, and fire bricks are made of a refractory material so that it doesn't react that way. It doesn't have moisture in it. It isn't going to explode. Okay?
I don't know how to tell you this, Bill.
I know we're running out of time again. I got a real hurry.
I know that you're not. I thought we were supposed to cover TIG tonight.
We're going to
too.
do it right now. Stop what you're saying. Folks, we're going to put something else in here that you're going to enjoy seeing. Don't go away. We'll come right back because we are going to get some TIG welding in here.
Okay.
Okay? Don't go away. We'll be right back.
What does Bill mean by something else that the audience might enjoy? I get it.
Let's return to the shop before we're completely out of time.
And find out about TIG welding.
Well, I've been informed by everybody in place, the camera people and Chris and Angie, that once again we've used up way too much time on this thing. I'm gonna have to, I'm gonna look at this in editing and see what I could have cut out of here.
Nothing.
Okay, I guess I think it's easier than this, but anyhow. Christine, and they also reminded me, I wanted to mention that rod run. Can you get that piece of paper for that rod run, please?
Once again, please remember this material was shot some 20 years ago, and things like event announcements are out of date.
We are happy to do these things.
By the way, the piece you were looking at with the motorsport girls dancing was shot while one of the girls who participated in the early years of Motorsports Unlimited was teaching the other girls some honey bear moves. Her name was Cammie Coleman, and she was a former Chicago honey bear dancer.
Right. No one knows
The
where
band was Tony Caruso and the Locomotions, featuring Mike Flanagan on lead guitar.
We want to be a communications vehicle. In any event, there is a club, and matter of fact, I understand this club is 20 years old? In fact, this is celebrating our 20th anniversary as a club. This is the Midwest Street Rod Association of Illinois, and they are having an event called Beers and Ears 12. Now,
That's the 12th year that they're having the event.
Oh, okay. They're celebrating their 20th anniversary, but this is the 12th year of this event. Ah,
Right.
I get it. Okay. And this is going to be in Woodstock, Illinois. I know that these guys have some really sharp cars because we got involved with one of the fellows last year with an absolutely gorgeous,
It was already 2 years ago.
oh, was it 2 years ago,
Yeah.
Model A pickup? Oh, was this thing beautiful?
It was
It
beautiful.
was so well, it was not just beautiful, it was technically excellent. It was a great piece. Anyhow, I'm going to go on and on about this and not finish what I have to do here. Folks, we wanted to do...
Did you mention the date? I don't believe you did.
Well,
Maybe you did, but say it again.
We'll say it again. It certainly won't hurt anything. June 25th, 1989. Sunday, June 25th. So that's going to be a great event, and this is some super street
And it's all
rods.
for charity, too.
Right. Okay, great. Well, we'll have more information of this on upcoming shows. All right. I wanted to do TIG welding, folks, and I guess I don't have time to do it. I'm going to do real briefly. I'm going to tell you a couple of things about TIG welding, and then we'll have to do another welding show, I guess. Right, Angie? Because Jan, I'm sorry.
Jan is Jan Gabriel, the man who originated Sunday for the racing commercials. He watches Motorsports Unlimited frequently and was quick to point out, enough welding already. Get back to the cars.
What is tungsten? What's tungsten?
Gee, I don't know. But the inert gas
Now, wait,
is argon.
okay, and what does inert mean?
Inert,
It doesn't burn?
I just explained this Sunday, and this
been
is
a while.
Tuesday. This is Tuesday. Anyhow, tungsten refers to the electrode. This is tungsten, all right? And tungsten is, theoretically, it's non-consumable, but when you buy as many of these as I do, you start finding out they are consumable. Well, they're not really consumable. They get contaminated, and you have to grind them and sharpen them and all that. But in any event...
They're not used in the process of
Exactly,
welding.
that's not the filler metal, all right? So that's the tungsten. The inert gas comes out of this cup around here. Chuck, if you can come in on a tight shot here, give it a try anyhow. I don't know if we're close enough. The weld itself is surrounded with argon. Argon is an inert gas, and inert means it doesn't do anything. It doesn't burn, it doesn't aid combustion, it doesn't react to anything. It's inert, it doesn't do anything. And the advantage of that is that you don't contaminate the weld. So it's tungsten, inert gas, welding. And I'm going to very quickly just demonstrate a little bit, and they're going to have to wait for the explanation about how to do aluminum and all that. This happens to be for steel. Chuck, if you pan down, you'll notice that there's a sort of, I'm going to call it a gas pedal down there, but we're not talking about gas. It is an accelerator pedal, and the accelerator pedal allows me to dial in, and again, the welders would say the amount of heat, but we're not.
You're gonna say amps.
Right, now Chuck has corrected me. He's the electric guy here, and he says we're talking about amps, Bill, so I stand corrected. We're talking about amps, and I'll give a little quick demonstration. Angie, what do you think?
Doesn't he make it look real easy, Ange?
yeah,
Isn't that a nice weld, though?
that's a very nice weld.
You'll have to admit.
Complimenting yourself, Bill.
Well, what I mean by, no, what I'm trying to compliment is not the, I mean, anyone can do it. What I'm trying to compliment is that this particular kind of welding technique makes beautiful welds. It does. TIG really does a nice job. It's clean, there's no slag, it's attractive, it's uniform in size all the way across. It is so nice and controllable. Anyway, that's all the time we have again, and I cannot believe this. We're going to get into TIG welding, and we're even going to get into MIG welding. Folks, we're going to have to do it another time.
Angie, what did he say when I mentioned to him when we were practicing on Sunday? He says, definitely we're going to do stick, and we're going to do MIG, and we're going to do TIG. I knew this was going to happen.
Never expect Bill to follow through on what he says. It always takes
You
more
see
shows.
See the kind of abuse I have to take on this program? Until next week, I'm Bill Wildt, this is Angie Kay, and this is Chris Schutz, and we want to thank you for watching.
Then, as now, Bill always ran out of time too soon. We only have enough left to acknowledge those who helped digitize and update this classic Motorsports Unlimited episode. Tom McGrady, Art Lauschat, Sue Cassanda, our webmaster Frank Barbalace, and Samantha Bentley. Special thanks to JBTV's Jerry Bryant. Music is created for us by independent artists Roger Pauly and Jerry Herbert. Of course, we have to take a moment to thank the stars of this edition of Motorsports Unlimited. Chris Schutz, Angie Kay, May Chin, Lynn Hewing, Ann Elliott, Cammie Coleman, Tammy Reeves, and our host, Bill Wildt. Me, I'm Janine Lauschat, taking just a moment to acknowledge the work of those who participated in the original production crew 20 years ago. Joe Courtney, Dan Schmidt, Frank Lombardo, Ken Sawinski, Chuck Itzenthaler, Dennis Bohan, Mark Spitzak, and Bruce Bober. Thanks for watching. See you next week.
This program made possible in part by support from J.C. Whitney & Company, located just off I-80 at the Utica exit in LaSalle, Illinois.
This program made possible in part by support from Jimmy's Red Hots, located on Grant Avenue and Pulaski Road in Chicago.
This program made possible in part by support from the Chicagoland Toys for Tots Motorcycle Parade, held on Western Avenue in Chicago, the first Sunday in December.
This program made possible in part by support from ABC Auto Parts, located on Ashland Avenue at 138th Street in Blue Island, Illinois.
Motorsports Unlimited is produced by Bill Wildt, president of the Motorsport Advancement Crusade.
This program made possible in part by support from Bridgestone Firestone and your local Bridgestone Firestone tire retailers.
This program made possible in part by support from Copy That, located in the County Farm Plaza at County Farm Road and Army Trail Road in Carroll Stream, Illinois. This program made possible in part by support from PB Food Products, located on 47th Street at Western Avenue in Chicago, Illinois. Motorsports Unlimited was created to raise public consciousness, understanding, and appreciation of the motorsport community and their activities. You can contact us by email at msutv.com, or you can write to Motorsport, P.O. Box 66242, Chicago, Illinois, 60666. We enjoy hearing from our audience. Please let us know what you think.
Next week on Motorsports Unlimited, we conclude our series about welding with TIG welding. That's tungsten inert gas welding, to be specific. It's strong, quick, pretty, and high-tech. Check it out next week on Motorsports Unlimited.
So that's it, another edition of Motorsports Unlimited and the lovely ladies of motorsports. And be with us next week because we'll have something real exciting. Bill Wildt's going to have the lovely ladies, and just about anything can happen right here on Motorsports Unlimited. Every week at this time, we bring you the best in motorsports. So be seeing ya. Bye-bye. And keep on rocking.